All right, today we're diving into something pretty radical, a detailed blueprint for how global trade could work completely outside the US dollar system. It's a really fascinating idea, all about creating a new kind of economic freedom. So let's jump right in.
Just think about that for a second. What if countries could buy and sell billions of dollars worth of goods? We're talking oil, cars, electronics, the whole shebang, and settle all their accounts without ever needing the world's #1 currency? So that's really the heart of what we're digging into here. Is a world that's not so dependent on the dollar actually possible?
So here's the game plan for how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the big idea. Why gold? Then, we'll see how it works with a simple two-country trade. After that, we'll scale it up to see how a whole network of countries could use it. We'll even look at how individual businesses are protected. And then finally, we'll weigh the pros and cons to see if this is a real deal vision for the future.
Okay, so the first thing you've got to get is that this is not about going back to the old days of using gold coins. Not at all. The big idea here is to use gold as a stable, neutral yardstick for value. Think of it like a common language for trade that isn't tied to any single country's economy or political moves.
And to make this whole thing work, they've come up with a new unit of account, the Trade Gold Ounce, or TGO. Now, don't think of this as money. It's not. It's more like a universal ruler. When an exporter prices something in TGOs, they're basically anchoring its value to a globally recognized physical asset. It creates a stable point of reference for the deal, no matter what their own currencies are doing back home.
So let's build this thing from the ground up. Let's start super simple, with a basic one-on-one trade between two countries. We'll imagine an Indian company selling something to a Singaporean company, just to see how the mechanics actually play out.
Now, the real genius here is how simple this is for the actual people doing the business. The Indian exporter quotes their price in TGO, but they get paid in their local currency, Indian rupees. The Singaporean importer pays in their local currency, Singapore dollars. All the magic happens behind the scenes. The central banks just make a note in a shared ledger that says Singapore owes India 2 TGOs. That's it. No dollars, no currency exchanges in the middle.
Okay, so when it's time to actually settle that ledger, say at the end of the quarter, the country that owes the money has a bunch of options. The main way, of course, is to just transfer the physical gold. But they could also agree to pay in Indian rupees, or maybe use a totally different currency, like the euro. Or they could even just roll the debt over for a little while. The point is, there's a ton of flexibility built right in.
Okay, so one-on-one trade, that makes sense. But let's be real, that's not how the world works, right? Global trade is a massive, interconnected network. So what happens when you have dozens of countries all trading with each other at the same time? How on earth do you manage that kind of complexity?
Well, if you don't have some kind of central coordinator, you end up with just an absolute mess, a tangled spider web of debt. India owes Russia, but Singapore owes India, and Russia might owe Oman. It's just this incredibly inefficient knot of payments going in every direction. Trying to settle that is a logistical nightmare.
And this is where a central clearinghouse, like this proposed BRICS settlement bank, would come in to save the day. It acts like a totally neutral scorekeeper for everyone. So instead of trying to track that tangled web, it just does one simple calculation at the end of the period. It boils that whole mess down to just one number for each country, their final net position. As you can see, India and Russia came out ahead, while Singapore and Oman owe money. And importantly, the whole system balances out perfectly.
So, to clear out that entire complicated web of trade, all those deals between all those countries, how many final payments do you think it takes? The answer is just 3.
And this, right here, is the power of what they call multilateral netting. The central bank issues 3 dead simple instructions. Oman, you pay your debt to Russia. Singapore, you pay the rest of what Russia is owed, and then you pay India what you owe them. Boom, done. The entire system is settled. It's just like splitting a dinner bill with a group of friends. Instead of everyone Venmoing everyone else, 1 or 2 people just pay the bill and everyone else pays them back. It's clean and efficient.
This all sounds fantastic for the big players, for the governments and the central banks, but what about the actual business owner? You know, the person on the ground who has a payroll to meet and suppliers to pay. Let's talk about their single biggest concern, risk.
Yeah, exactly. If you're an exporter and you agree to a deal that's worth 2 gold ounces, but you're not getting paid for 90 days, you can't be gambling on what the price of gold is going to do 3 months from now, right? Your job is making stuff, not playing the commodities market. So how do you get some certainty? Well, the answer is a pretty neat financial tool called a gold forward contract, or GFC, and it's actually a really simple but powerful idea. The moment the exporter signs their deal, they go to their local bank, and they lock in a future price. They're basically saying, hey, in 90 days, I'm going to receive 2 gold ounces, I want to sell them to you then, but for a price in my local currency that we agree on right now.
So here's how that plays out. The exporter gets the order, and literally that same day, they sign the GFC with their bank, locking in their exact revenue. Now they can go ahead, make their product, ship it off, and have complete peace of mind about how much money they're going to make. Then, when payment day rolls around, those 2 gold ounces go to their bank, and the bank just deposits the pre-agreed amount of local currency right into their account. All the risk is just gone. And the beautiful thing is, the exporter is now totally shielded from the market's craziness. If the price of gold shoots through the roof, they don't get a surprise bonus, they just get the amount they locked in. But crucially, if the price of gold crashes, they are completely protected from that loss. The bank is the one taking on that market risk, which is their job, and it lets the exporter just focus on their business.
Okay, so we've seen how all the gears could, in theory, turn together. But is this really a perfect system? Of course not. So let's step back and get a really balanced, honest look at both the potential upsides and the very real challenges a system like this would have to overcome.
So you've got this really interesting tug of war, right? On the one side, the strengths are pretty compelling. You get the stability that comes with gold, and you get a genuine way to operate outside the dollar system. But then you look at the other side of the ledger, and the challenges are just as serious. Gold's price does fluctuate, and any country that consistently runs a trade deficit could find itself bleeding its precious gold reserves. That's the core debate right there. So when you put all these different pieces back together, the simple trades, the smart netting system, the safety net for businesses, what have we actually built here? What does it all add up to? Well, what you have is a blueprint for a completely new architecture for how global trade could work.
You know, this quote from the analysis we looked at really says it all. While some other ideas are just about making small changes to the current system, this proposal is being called a visionary leap. It's an attempt to build something fundamentally different, something potentially more resilient, right from the ground up.
And that really brings us to the final multi-trillion-dollar question, doesn't it? Is this a workable blueprint for a future with real economic independence for more countries? Or are the logistical hurdles, the reliance on a physical asset, just too much to overcome, making it a brilliant idea that's just too complex to ever happen in the real world? That's the big question this whole idea leaves us with.